He walked through the grand double doors, shoulders back, trying not to let the stairs get to him. The golf club was quiet, but the silence said everything. Polished floors, crisp uniforms, and hushed conversations. He could feel the tension the moment he stepped in. It wasn't what was said out loud, it was the glances, the whispers. And then finally, one of them said it, "You don't belong here." The words hit hard, not because they were surprising, but because he'd heard versions of them his whole life. Still, something about that day, about how casually it was said, lit a fire in him. He had come just to play a round of golf with a friend, nothing more, but instead, he was met with a kind of judgment that reminded him of all the doors that had been closed before he even got the chance to knock. Security was called, questions were asked, and just like that, he was escorted off the property like a threat, not a guest. But what they didn't know was this. The man they turned away wasn't just anyone. He was a quiet force in business, a self-made success who knew exactly how to turn disrespect into fuel. And as he stood outside that gate, watching the place that tried to keep him out, he didn't get angry, he got focused. Because the next time he'd walk through those doors, it wouldn't be as a guest, it would be as the owner. He didn't grow up around golf courses, luxury dining rooms, or gated communities. In fact, for most of his childhood, the closest thing to a country club was a small public park where he'd hit tennis balls against a cracked wall. Money was tight. His mom worked 2 jobs, and he learned early on that no one was going to hand him anything. So he worked hard, first through school, then through a string of jobs that taught him everything from discipline to negotiation. By the time he hit his 30s, he had built a small but growing real estate investment firm. Quietly, smartly, under the radar. He never wore flashy suits or talked about money. That wasn't his style, which is probably why the staff at the country club that day didn't even bother asking who he was. To them, he didn't look like he belonged, and that assumption was their biggest mistake. Later that night, as he sat at his kitchen table, something kept eating at him. He didn't need to prove anything to anyone. Had made peace with being underestimated a long time ago. But this time felt different. The way he was dismissed, so casually, so confidently, it was more than just an insult. It was a reminder that some places were still clinging to old rules. And the only way to change that wasn't by fighting back with words. It was by taking control of the very system that tried to shut him out. He spent the next few weeks researching everything about that country club. Its ownership structure, board members, recent financial reports, nothing was off limits. Turns out, beneath the glossy exterior, the club wasn't doing as well as it seemed. Memberships were declining, upkeep costs were rising, and several of the older investors were quietly looking to cash out. Still, buying a place like that wasn't just about money. It meant dealing with politics, hidden egos, and unspoken rules that weren't written anywhere but followed religiously. Meanwhile, he started showing up at nearby clubs, just to observe, to see how the culture worked, who had power and who just liked to pretend. He kept a low profile, but people started noticing. Some whispered, others asked questions, and one of the members who saw what happened the day he was kicked out reached out privately. He'd seen the unfair treatment, and though he wasn't the type to speak up publicly, he offered inside information that would prove useful. It was a small crack in the wall, but it was all he needed. At the same time, his own team warned him, buying this club could backfire. It was high risk, high visibility, and would put him in the center of a world that never wanted him there to begin with. But he'd already made up his mind. This wasn't about playing it safe. It was about challenging the idea of who gets to belong in elite spaces, and what happens when someone walks in and rewrites the rules. The deeper he got into negotiations, the more resistance he faced. Some of the existing board members flat out refused to meet with him. Others acted friendly on the surface, but sent emails behind closed doors, warning each other that he was trying to change things too fast. Rumors started to swirl that he wasn't serious, that he didn't have the backing, that he wouldn't be able to handle a place like this. But every doubt just added fuel to the fire. He wasn't chasing their approval. He was coming for ownership. While tensions built at the club, things got messy behind the scenes. A rival investor, someone who had strong ties with the current members, suddenly stepped in with an aggressive offer. It was clear this was about more than business. It was personal. They didn't just want to stop him from buying the club. They wanted to make sure someone like him never got that close again. To complicate things further, the member who had secretly helped him started backing off. Pressure from the board, threats to his own membership. It was clear the old guard was trying to shut every door before it could open. But by now, he had his own network. Investors who believed in his vision, former employees of the club who wanted change, and a community ready for a different kind of leadership. Still, the final deal wasn't done. Everything hinged on one meeting, one vote, one moment that could flip everything or shut it all down for good. Just days before the final vote, everything took a sharp turn. One of his main investors, someone who had promised full support, suddenly pulled out. No warning, no explanation, just a short message saying, "Sorry, timing's not right." It hit hard. That funding had been a key piece in securing the deal. Without it, the entire plan was at risk. At first, he thought it was just bad timing. But later, through a quiet conversation with someone on the inside, he found out the truth. That same rival investor had been calling his backers one by one, whispering doubts, spreading stories, even threatening to tank future deals if they didn't walk away from him. It was a full court press to keep him out. Meanwhile, inside the country club, word was getting around. Some members were furious at the idea of change. Others were just afraid of the unknown. Anonymous letters started showing up at the board's office, questioning his intentions and claiming he would destroy the tradition of the club. Tension hung heavy in the air, and even the staff seemed nervous about what would come next. But the biggest shock came when he received a private message from someone he didn't expect, the original founder's daughter. She said she wanted to meet. She had stayed out of club politics for years, but now she said she had something to say. Something that could change the board's vote, or end his chances completely. And just like that, the stakes were higher than ever. He arrived early for the meeting with the founder's daughter, unsure what to expect. She greeted him with a calm but guarded tone, then handed him an old leather-bound folder. Inside were letters, meeting notes, and a copy of her father's original mission for the country club. It wasn't built just for prestige. It was supposed to be a place of progress, where people from all backgrounds could grow and connect. She told him quietly, "This place lost its way a long time ago. I think it's time it came back." With her name and legacy behind him, he walked into the final board vote with a renewed sense of purpose. The room was tense. Members sat stiffly around the table, some nodding politely, others clearly avoiding eye contact. He gave his pitch, calmly, clearly, and without apology. He didn't promise to change everything overnight. He promised to honor the roots while bringing the club into the future. Then came the vote. It was close, closer than he expected. But when the final hand was raised, the deal was approved. He had done it. He was now the owner of the country club that once told him he didn't belong. But just as the room began to clear, one of the older board members leaned in and muttered, "You may own the club now, but don't think that means they'll ever accept you." He smiled, not out of arrogance, but because he finally understood he didn't need acceptance. He was here to lead. The first few months were anything but easy. Some members quietly left the country club. Others stayed, watching from a distance, waiting for him to slip up. But he stayed focused. He brought in a new general manager who understood both tradition and innovation. He improved access for underrepresented communities, opened mentorship programs for young professionals, and introduced family-friendly events that brought in fresh energy. Slowly, the atmosphere began to shift. Staff who once kept their heads down now walked the halls with more confidence. Younger members started signing up, and even a few of the original skeptics admitted, quietly, that things felt better. The founder's daughter joined the first community brunch and said it was the first time the club felt like her father's vision again. That meant everything. And as for the investor who tried to block the deal, his influence faded fast. Word got around about his tactics, and soon he was quietly pushed out of other projects. In the end, what started as a moment of rejection turned into a full-circle victory. He didn't just buy the country club to prove a point. He reshaped it into a place where belonging wasn't based on how you looked or who you knew, but on how you treated others. He reminded everyone watching, on both sides of the fence, that power isn't about exclusion. It's about using your seat at the table to build along the table, and that's exactly what he did.